everyone, I'm Michaela, and today we welcome Carly Webster to the Soundtrack of Our Lives podcast. She's going to talk to us about the importance of fandom, her journey through it, and her amazing project, DisabledSOS. Welcome. We're really glad to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so to start, can you tell us a little bit about what the project is?
Yeah, so I started DisabledSOS technically in 2018. There was a hashtag before that in 2016, but the main gist is that I kind of just really noticed a lot of a lack of representation for disabled fans within fandom, the Five Sauce fandom in particular. And I was like, you know what? People are creating amazing projects for like all these different things, but I haven't seen anything for like disabled people yet. So that's where I was like, okay, thought about this hashtag that happened 2 years earlier, and I was like, okay, it's time to like bring it back. It's time to do something with it because at that point in time, like when it happened, it was very powerful. And mind you, like I was only 13 at the time, so that was a very big moment, having like a whole hashtag trend, like just because me and a few of my friends like wanted to do something. And so I was like, there's so much potential here. So that's when I kind of started it. And at that time, it started as a fan project. So we were doing stuff at the shows, kind of just spreading the word online as well. And then, we've kind of had a mix of online and in-person stuff since then, obviously not during the pandemic, but we had a few one-off projects prior to the pandemic, and then mostly pretty much like all virtual since then, which isn't a problem because online like fandom spaces are mostly online anyway. So it's like that's kind of where we're at.
That's awesome. Can you talk about a little bit like what your plans for going forward are with the project?
Yeah, so we're doing some kind of strategic planning right now. I hope kind of in the future that we're able to expand the Five Sauce fandom, because what I've kind of been told a lot by people in the industry right now is that, hey, this has, again, a lot of potential.
Yeah.
But, there's not much you can do with it just inside this one fandom, and it could go way beyond that. So, our goal right now is to kind of re-engage the Five Sauce fandom, get some traction in there, because we have kind of been inactive a lot the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So kind of bringing attention back to what we're doing. Then once we've kind of gained the attention of the Five Sauce fandom, then maybe we can try it out with a different fandom and see, what works, what doesn't. Is the engagement going to be the same? Is the reception going to be the same? So yeah, I think I've thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it all in one full swoop, or if we just kind of want to do test runs. We haven't really thought that far yet. We're kind of just trying to get through right now. But and I also debated, okay, do we want to become a 501c3 nonprofit? There's a lot of money attached to that. There's a lot of documentation, registration, all that kinds of stuff attached to that, and that's just not something I am personally ready for, because that, like, I'm a college student. I do a lot of other things, so it's like that's just not something I'm ready for yet. And plus, I think we need to establish good, like, solid programming, mission statements, all that kinds of stuff before we delve into that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, did you start this while you were in college?
So like I said, when the hashtag happened in 2016, I was 13.
Right.
So at the time the project started, I was in high school.
Okay.
So I'm in college right now, but it's so I think we turned technically 5 in July.
Okay.
So it's been a hot minute. It feels like, like just yesterday. Because I remember even when I was in high school, I would just spend hours, like I would go home, my homework did not matter. I was like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm grinding. Sometimes I'm still like that, but I will be candid with you. Sometimes, these days, with everything that I do at school, with everything that I do in the industry currently, it's to the point where, hey, like sometimes I'm not sure what to do with my time. Like, it's hard to know, like there's so much that I have to do and so many responsibilities that I have as a founder.
Yeah.
That it's just you have to start somewhere, but it's like I'm stuck in that kind of, I don't know where to start,
I am in exactly the same place as you because I founded this and I actually started it my senior year of college. And I did the same thing as you did in high school. I kind of, everything else, took a back seat and I just focused on this. And then, I was like, oh, maybe I should focus more on school. But I graduated. So, that's done.
Yeah.
Now I can focus on this.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's definitely, I we're just in a very, very interesting spot right now, but it's stuff like this that not only gets the word out, but also I think really keeps things like authentic. Because I do like to be transparent. I do like to be open about what we're doing, where we're at, all that kinds of stuff. And I think every time I have these conversations, it kind of just reignites the passion that I have and reminds me, hey, there's a reason that you're doing this. There's a reason people look up to it. Not trying to like ego boost myself, but
no, I know what you mean.
But like at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the other fans. It's about people who in the spaces where they're supposed to feel safe, supposed to feel included, supposed to feel like nothing else matters, still feel excluded. So yeah, that's just it's nice to get messages and opportunities like this, but at the same time, like that's not what I do it for.
Right. So, going off of that, so what can somebody like me who is not disabled do to make it a better and more inclusive environment?
It's an easy and a hard question because there's so much that society, so many barriers. We can't obviously, we as individuals won't be able to tackle them.
Right.
But we as a collective will. And so sometimes, the disabled community, we kind of just have to pick our battles. Because we only have so much energy. We only have so much power. So, obviously we're very much capable of addressing multiple issues at the same time, but I think, especially for people in industry spaces or in fandom spaces, it's especially important that our content is accessible. So very, very simple things like adding alt text, image descriptions, using camel case hashtags, which is like every new word has to be, the first letter has to be capitalized. So basically think of it like a news title, basically like that. So stuff like that, being mindful of language. So like keeping up to date with any terms, stuff like that. I think disabled creators especially are always drawing attention to that, so making sure that you're intentionally like paying attention to that. And then when it comes to like the physical space, there's a lot of conversations about this. There's a lot of debate on, okay, like what is and isn't reasonable. But especially on the non-disabled person side, like I think we could talk about this all day, but I think people often get very passionate, which I don't blame them. They get very passionate about that front row barricade spot or something like that. They don't think about, hey, there might be a person with an invisible disability that needs to be barricaded, because if they don't, they'll literally collapse.
Right.
So it's just being mindful of those things and being prepared to help, being prepared to step in. And if you're not able to step in, if you're like, in a situation where you can't help, find someone who can. Use your ability to speak up for the person who's, maybe in a medical situation. It's being aware of your surroundings and also how you converse and interact with other people at those shows, and just advocating for better accessibility, like even at your local venues. I mean, and I think this conversation kind of makes me think maybe we need to like locate resources or put together resources for people like you who are wondering what the heck they can do, because I think it's can be just as overwhelming for someone who doesn't experience it to know, okay, where the heck do I start with doing better.
Right.
Because, like I said, as individuals, we can't do everything. We can't tackle
It's
everything,
impossible.
but we absolutely can and should do something. So
Yes.
that's if anything, if there's anything that anybody takes away from this, is that your voice, your action has so much power. And you use that for good. It doesn't matter if you're talking to like one single friend or an entire group of people. And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying is, like, I don't do this for any sort of clout or anything like that. I mean, the one thing that I always tell people, especially when we're asking for like press help and stuff like that, is if we can reach one person, then our job is done our job.
Yeah.
Because that one person can lead to another person, another person, another person. So it's I really do believe in like the chain reaction, the just kind of the immense impact that especially social media has. Yeah. Sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No, I love it. I can really feel your passion.
Thank you.
So, like on a lighter side, I guess, where did your love for music start?
You know what? When I really do think about it, it's hard to explain because I know I've always kind of loved music. Like when I was younger, I really liked music class, I think. But I think it was kind of that 2010s era where, I was, my parents finally let me have decent technology and like, which they probably shouldn't have at that time. Definitely shouldn't have, but I was kind of using that freedom and access to like listen to music. And I remember obviously artists at the time like One Direction, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, those types of artists were on all of our favorite TV channels at the time. So I think I was kind of, a lot of the time it was going to what I saw on TV, and then becoming invested in that.
That makes sense.
And so my fandom experience kind of started at the same time, but then there was kind of a little bit of I was more so involved in like content creator fandom at that point in time, and then I kind of took a little bit of a break, and then that's when I kind of around the 2016 time was when I became really involved in music fandom.
That's awesome. And so I watched your TED Talk and I loved it. And you were talking about, making friends within the fandom. Can you talk a little bit to the importance of that?
Yeah, I think, we talk a lot about how the music industry feels big, but also very small. And I think the same can be said for fandoms. I mean, there's millions of people following these artists.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's very easy to think that in that sphere, you're very small and you're like a nobody.
Yeah.
But I think, especially for, marginalized populations, I think it's especially important to utilize fandom spaces for friends because oftentimes we are in our everyday life, we are put aside, we are the outcasts. But in those fandom spaces, not to say that they aren't problematic in themselves, but putting that aside, a lot of the time it's just you can forget about that. Like, in for example, in both a good and a bad way, someone can not even show their face and just have a profile picture of one of their favorite artists.
Yeah.
And no one would really care who's behind that screen as long as you're, excuse my language, not being a shitty person.
I agree.
So I think, like I said, problematic aspects to both, but I think just for a lot of people, and I have, while I'm talking about it, don't know if anybody heard of this book, but if you're listening to this, not watching, Everything I Need I Get From You by Caitlin Tiffany. Okay. It is a newer like fan engagement type book. I haven't really read much into it, but the beginning of it talks a lot about One Direction and just kind of the impact that stands have had on the internet as a whole. Yeah. And I've read one other like fan engagement book that was really good, Fangirls by Hannah Ewens. that talked about various fandoms and how people really just found solace in that, especially again in the early 2010s. So yeah, it's just, again, internet is problematic.
Yeah.
Internet has its issues, but I think in the early days of fandom, back to the Beatles and stuff like that, people didn't have as much of an ability to connect to people across the world.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, now we do have access to that, and all of our, people can learn about cultures. People can learn about things that they didn't know about before.
Yeah.
And so I think that's extremely important too, because we're diversifying our knowledge. We're diversifying the people that we surround ourselves with, the content that we interact with, and overall just our, sense of self and sense of, okay, what world do I like? What does the world around me look like? And I think we begin to feel a lot less like we're, by ourselves.
I have experienced the same thing, and I feel that most people will feel the same way.
Yeah, totally.
So I was wondering, aside from DisabledSOS, who I know are one of your favorite artists, who would you say are some of your other favorite artists?
Yeah, so been really into the band Camino. Just released a new album. It's I didn't know how I felt about it at first, but it's grown on me.
Okay.
Also, DisabledSOS have introduced me to a lot of my favorite artists because they're openers. So like Pale Waves, Meet Me at the Altar, Casey Musgraves, The Beaches, Paramore. Yeah, just to name a few.
Awesome. Are you active in those fandom communities as well?
I would say it's kind of weird because the more I've become active in the music industry, the professional side, if you would call it. I hate to call it that because
I know what you're saying.
Fans are very much professionals too because they have so much knowledge. Like, hire the fans.
Yes.
That's what we're saying. But anyways, ever since I've gotten more involved, creating LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff, which I did not have like before 2021, which honestly makes sense because I was, just turned 18 that year. Right. But when I started getting active there, that's when my fandom, activity kind of slowed down. Do I think I will fully abandon it? Maybe not. I still want to keep engaging with new music, studying fandom, because people do that and it's incredible. I want to do that. Do I think it's going to leave my life? I certainly hope not. I certainly don't think music is going to leave my life, but there have been times, especially lately, where I have questions like, hey, like, is this something that I really want to like contribute to anymore? Like, because at the end of the day, not to get on a soapbox, but like, there's this whole concept of capitalism and consumerism and okay, like fans buying hundreds of dollars worth of merch. Is that really like necessary? Because we're giving, if you think about it, we're giving people who have these huge platforms and all these resources even more resources. And sometimes they don't do the greatest things with said resources. Yeah. So, not to lecture anybody about, hey, your favorite artists are problematic, because I think we've, a lot of us have had that experience where we questioned whether we want to support someone. But I think there has to be a line, honestly. Yeah. That goes with artist boundaries, that goes with, okay, how much of your life is this taking up? Yeah. There's nothing wrong. I mean, like I said earlier, there were days where I would just skip right past my homework and work on the project. But I think, like I said, has to be boundaries. Yeah. I know people who have like professional jobs in the industry and still have a fan account. That's totally okay. If that works for you and you've got something set up, good on you. I just think we need to be cognizant of the societal circumstances that we're currently living in and how fandom is attached to that in some way.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about you being a professional. What do you hope to do in the industry?
I want to work in touring, more specifically. Like, it's funny because there are people in the industry that I've talked to that like weren't even really sure the niche area that I want to get into. Like and it's common knowledge that there's like production, there's ticketing, all that kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But people, unless you're a fan and have experienced it before, you probably don't know a lot about VIP merch, stuff like that. Granted, there are people out there who do merch or have been doing merch in VIP and weren't necessarily in a fandom space, but I think it's drastically different now that fans are getting hired, because the big reason that I want to get into it is because I want to make sure that every single fan has a good experience. And because I've lived through that, I know what people want. Granted, fans a decade from now may be a little bit different, because obviously we're evolving every single day, but I at least know, okay, like what can we expect from fans, so I think I just want to carry through my mission of making things accessible into a touring career. If I were able to do DisabledSOS, whatever it's going to be at that time, and tour at the same time, like, great. If I have to leave one behind, like, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Yeah.
But, I just want to be making a positive impact however I can, and make sure that, music is so powerful and so, like, just incredible, and I want to make sure that people are able to experience that and just, be able to explore the creativity that other people themselves and other people have, and just completely, like, submerge themselves in that.
I love that. Are there any bands or artists that can be seen, as a leader in accessibility in the industry?
There's definitely been some that I've seen that have, I wouldn't necessarily call them leaders, but they're definitely setting an example. They're proving that accessibility does not have to be hard or expensive or difficult, In fact, it should be part of every process. One example, I wrote an article for a Scribe magazine about this a couple of years ago, but the Wonder Years partnered with an organization that one of my friends founded, called Half Access. They partnered with them to make accessibility information about their tour available before the tickets even went on sale. They, had that available. And I think Coldplay, they have done a lot of accessibility stuff with their recent tour. I believe they kind of designed an experience for, people with certain disabilities so that they could have, like, a good experience and, be able to really, again, like, immerse themselves in it. Portugal the Man also has done some really, really awesome stuff, especially because one of their, members is disabled. So, that's a really big part of what they do as well.
What are some common misconceptions that people have about fans that are disabled?
I don't know if there are misconceptions, but I definitely think we are like I've said before, we're oftentimes an afterthought. For example, some venues, yes, they have accessible seating, but it's either impossible to buy or it's in the way back of the venue. And I think, I could go on and on about it. I mean, I'll just tell everybody that's listening, keep an eye out on the DisabledSOS Instagram and, like, all of our social medias, because we'll be doing a lot of content about this. Because I have to talk about these things somewhere. So anyways, but I think, yes, we definitely are an afterthought, and I think it's thought to be, the artists are already making their content accessible. If they have, this much, support, then everything must be good. But, I think there's also the concept of venues handling accessibility, and, to be honest with you, this is a really hard question because I've never really thought about it that much. But I just think I think it's important for people to remember that it's not, disabilities are not the barriers. Disabilities are not the problems.
Right.
It's society that is the problem. And I think we need to open those doors so that disabled fans are equally able to participate in fandom regardless of their circumstances. And I also, aside from disability, I also advocate for financial accessibility for things because, you know, again, back to the whole capitalist thing. I think if someone wants to wear a t-shirt that has their favorite artist on it, I don't think that it's exactly fair that, you know, $50 is standing between them and their creative expression. You know, obviously the business has to make money. I get it. But I think with how creative fans are, we can come up with ways to make it more accessible. Another example is that the BTS fandom has raised so much money for like so many causes. And I think if we use that power and that influence to advocate for accessibility, I think at some point somebody would have to listen. Whether that's the artist teams, because believe it or not, they have some power. If they put something on the writer, for example, I don't know much about venues, but I think there's probably little to nothing that can be said no to. Like I said, don't take my word for it, but I think the venues really, like, obviously there's an exchange there, there's a relationship there, but, you know, if the artist asks for something, then somebody is going to get it. Like, somebody is going to get it for that. Yes, there's a reason there's caterers, there's a reason there's TMs, all that kind of stuff. So, with that being said, if the artist speaks up about, hey, we want more accessible venues, then again, somebody has to listen. But it's the fact that they don't want to. They do not want to hear that what they're doing is the bare freaking minimum. Because that's what the ADA is. And sorry if I'm getting a little passionate, but the ADA is the bare minimum. And it just now got some like some additions, but we've had to fight for decades for that. Our entire existence for that. And the one thing that we're asking for is to make it easier and more accessible for us to go and enjoy something like music. For once in our life, like, let me put it this way, we should not have to experience barriers to something that does not, in concept, that wasn't grammatically correct, that in itself, music does not have boundaries, right? So we should not have something standing in between us and that. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I understood that. Yeah. Are there any venues that you've either been to or heard of that are doing a great job at this?
I've had pretty good experiences here in Ohio. You would think I would keep more updated with this, but there's just so much going on in this brain of mine that I'm like, I don't know. But I will plug the Have Access database. They have all kinds of information about, you know, venues. There's not, you know, some of the popular ones are not really on there, but you can find some information about, okay, do they let disabled fans skip the line? Are there accessible restrooms? All that kinds of stuff on their database. But I know that I was told that Bridgestone Arena in Nashville has a sensory room, which is great.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think one thing to remember when we talk about accessibility is that it's consistently evolving, and people don't have the same accessibility needs that they might have had 20 years ago. Especially with the conversation about neurodivergency and all that kind of stuff, I think, you know, accessibility looks a lot different, and it's different in every case. Like, there's not a one size fits all solution for things. So people need to be willing to learn and adapt and be flexible and understand that it's not going to be an overnight thing, and it most definitely won't cover, like, one little thing won't cover every single need that's going to come at you, you know? So yeah, I think it's really, like I said, evolving, and I would be interested to see the accessibility initiatives that venues develop, especially as we're still in the pandemic and that's still affecting disabled people, what is developed. And I think I want to be a part of those conversations as much as I can be, even if it's just in my local area. And I highly, again, encourage anyone, not just disabled people. I think a point to make is that we need to involve disabled people in these conversations. Yes. But anyone has the power to send an email being like, hey, can we set up 30 minutes to talk about accessibility at your venue? Something like that. Because oftentimes it's not something, again, beyond the bare minimum that people have considered.
Mm-hmm. What is something that a venue could do to make things more accessible?
Again, there's a lot of different things, but I think there's a lot of, discussion and resources about this. But again, just involving disabled people in the conversation. Mm-hmm. Because federal legislation does not do us justice. Yeah. Because if you think about it, it's most likely able-bodied cisgender heterosexual white men that are making these decisions for us. Yeah. So I think number one is involving the disabled people in the conversation, asking us, being genuine with us, not doing it just to check some boxes, but because you actually want to do better and actually want to make your venue as accessible as it can be. So yeah, I think it's really, obviously there's money behind everything. So you really have to invest in it and be willing to do that. I think there's sometimes the excuse of, making this accessible is going to be too expensive. We're just we're a historic venue. We can't change this and this and this. That may be true, but you have the full capability of finding alternatives and figuring it out, because we've had to figure it out. We have to do it on our own. So, why don't you step in our shoes for 2 seconds,
So if anyone listening wanted to get involved in this conversation, what would be the best way that they could go about doing that?
Yeah, so just follow us on social media. We have Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We also have a website. It's a super long link, so I'm not gonna say it. I'm sure you'll link it. But yeah, all of our social media is at DisabledSOS, DisabledSOS, which is not how it's pronounced, but how it's spelled. Try to make that distinction. But yes, so just keep an eye on our social medias. As of this conversation, we closed our applications for our team, but there's always plenty of ways to get involved, and we'll always be, keeping everybody in the loop about that.
Yeah, so my last question for you is, what is the soundtrack of your life?
Oh my god. What? This question! Are you wanting a specific album or
just
something?
However you want to answer it.
What is
it's open to your interpretation.
What is the soundtrack of my life? I don't know. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to think about this forever. What the heck? I never expect this. The soundtrack of my life is being, again, excuse my language, being fucking resilient.
I love
because that. I mean, we've all been through shit, but I don't know. I mean, I sit, I have these conversations and I sit and I think, I'm really proud of myself for getting through the things that I've gone through. And I don't know, I continue to want to have, I want to have that resiliency and that perseverance and the strength to kind of keep going forward, because this industry is tough. Being a disabled person in this industry is extra tough. So I'm like, if I have no one else, then I have myself, you have yourself. And so sometimes you just have to be your own friend. You have to be your own mentor, your own boss, whatever it might be. And it sounds cliche, but just reminding yourself that you're here and that you're whatever it is, if it's a job, if it's, a nonprofit like this, if it's whatever you're doing something. Even if you're not, even if you're in a place where all you can do is lay in bed all day, you're existing and you're your existence is making a difference in somebody's life. Like, because you are here, especially if like you're a mother, because you're here, somebody else is here.
Yeah.
So it's you have to remind yourself that you're present. And I think for a lot of people that's hard, but just, I don't want to preach a whole mindfulness thing, but just being present with yourself whenever you can, and giving yourself a hug.
Yeah.
So yeah, resilience.
I love that. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about today?
No, just thank you so much for chatting.
Yeah, I know you already mentioned your social, so I won't ask you to put them out again because you already said that. Unless there was one that did you? I don't think you missed any. I think you got them all.
Nope, I think we're good. Yeah, just keep an eye on our socials. Whenever you see something, share something. That's all we can ask for.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to me today.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, but have a nice day.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye. Listeners, go check it out and make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at STO Lives Podcast. Thanks for joining us.